let's transition to that. Miss Bowman, you want to hit the lights for me, please? All right. With our word of the day, we try to do this 2 times a week, and the reason why we do this is try to develop vocabulary, and then get some current event stuff going on, and then the other thing is we try to get some type of writing in there. Now, Ms. Doris, you're in 2 of my classes, so that happens every once in a while, so you're going to have to keep 2 separate sheets because we're going to go on 2 different schedules. Some of the words are going to be the same, right? So you'll have an advantage that way. Maybe a little repetitious for you to write it down there, but some of the context that we have are going to be different. Some of the things I ask you to write about may be a little bit different there, okay? All right, so we try to come up with 3 synonyms, 3 antonyms, part of speech, and then we write a sentence. We come up with our own sentence. You don't rewrite the sentence that's up there on the board. You come up with one of your own. I give you a context to write about, and then I give you a rule to follow, okay? So we have redact and edit are synonyms of censor. We need one more synonym, Clayton. Subtract. Yeah, you're subtracting it from the content. Our antonyms, we got add. Another one, Ms. Bowman. Reveal. Reveal. And one more antonym, Ms. Jensen. What if you take a story and you add content to it and it's not really true? You're kind of taking some liberties when you add to it. Begins with an M. I'm sorry, an E. Kind of sounds like an M. Anybody ever heard of embellishing? Embellish. So I think of that kind of like the opposite of censor. You know, you're taking stuff away, but then you can add stuff on top that's not exactly accurate. Embellish. All right, part of speech, Ms. Danny? It is verb. And our sentence context today. You're going to write about Iran, right? So we got some interesting stuff going on with Iran over the past couple of weeks. The most recent one that I want to hit on is they shot down a plane. You guys heard about the plane that was, it was a Ukrainian plane, right? And so there was a number of Ukrainian passengers on there, and then there was a number of Canadians, I think, on there as well. And they want repercussions because that, you know, their citizens, a number of them died in that plane crash. So they had a missile that the Iranians were using there, okay? And so at first, the Iranian government denied responsibility associated with it. And then after about 3 days, then they relented and said, yeah, we're kind of responsible for this. Okay, so protests have broke out in Iran, right? And protests are fairly common in Iran. One of the common protests that they have is they have a tendency to shout death to America, right? Quite often, very common, which is kind of you get a misunderstanding from our American perspective. When they say death to America, they're really referring to like death to the American political system, American government, American imperialism, American influence in the Middle East is really what they're talking about. So they'll say that at one time, and then like 30 minutes later, they'll be talking about American culture and saying, yeah, we like American culture. It's pretty cool. We like the way they dress, like the things that they do, like the American social media. That's all cool stuff. We like that stuff, right? So we don't really, think about that side of things. So more recently, these protests have kind of changed. Instead of saying death to America, they've started shouting death to the liars, right? And what they're referring to is they're referring to their supreme leader. In Iran, they have a theocracy where they have a political system where there's really no separation between their religious leaders and their political leaders. And so the guy that really makes all the decisions is the supreme leader of the Ayatollah. They do have a president, so on the surface it kind of looks like a democracy, but essentially the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, is the one that really makes all the big decisions. And they want these protesters, these young people, the younger generations in Iran, it looks like they're wanting him to resign from his position. Right? So they're putting a lot of pressure on the Iranian government right now. So that is going to be our sentence context. Anybody got any thoughts, questions about that? Oh, one last thing, since we got censor as a word. They kind of ban the Iranian government bans social media. A lot of aspects of social media in Iran. However, ironically, the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, he likes to tweet, and he tweets a lot, right? And he tweets a lot about, death to America kind of things. So I find it kind of ironic. Nobody else can participate, but I can tweet. Once you finish your sentence, go ahead and share it with the person in front of the person behind you. I guess I did give you a heads up. I imagine you already did this, but our rule with the writing this week is you got to write a complete sentence. Okay? You got to have a capital letter at the beginning, and you have to have a punctuation at the end. Sound good? I'm pretty particular about that, making sure that you got a capital letter. That is the rule to start a sentence with a capital letter. And then you do have to have a period or some other form of punctuation at the end. Thank you.
Communication of their people, so people have to
That's what my global culture students do. When we read them, they start shouting out, "Man, that's a really good one," to make their partner have to read. All right, Ms. Jenna, go ahead and read yours, because she is truly authentically thought that yours is good.
Leaders of Iran censor information and communication of their people, so the people have begun to rebel.
Good, very good. All right, so, one of the great things about freedom of speech is to be able to hold other people in authoritative positions accountable for their actions, for their decisions, right? No freedom of speech, then that accountability is lost. So that's a great thing about the American cultural system. Okay? All right, let's get back to our 5 key concepts. Again, we started with social structure and social action, and we got this one, right? Okay, so we talked about how functional integration, that particular key, is kind of making a comparison. It's a metaphor between the human body and society as a whole. Remember the guy's name? Spencer, right? Herbert Spencer, okay? So he's saying he was greatly influenced by the work of Charles Darwin and evolution. And so, with his influence there, he was thinking that, as organisms change, he's saying that societies change. And from his perspective, it's all about progression. Then inevitably things would get better and better and better. And so we'll challenge that idea a little bit later, and we'll talk about rationalization and over-efficiency and those type of things a little bit later on. There's an interesting text that used to be popular in college classes called The McDonaldization of America that really references like an argument against some of Spencer's ideas. Let's talk about his metaphor a little bit more, though. So we talked about how the human body has some important parts, right? Like the heart, the mind, right? And without those, the organism's not going to be able to function, right? Pretty much going to die, right? So the idea here with the metaphor is that there's some important institutions in our society that without them, society is going to fall apart. For example, like government, right? Without government, without law, rule of law, society is going to fall apart there, okay? So other social institutions that would be pretty big would be like industry, the military. You could even say aspects of like religion could be a part of that as an institution. A number of other things there as well. All right, but I want you to think of this as a cycle. I know I don't have arrows up here, but think of it like a cycle going clockwise here. Okay, so we're going to start with government. What does government do for schools provide for schools? It gives it money. Yes, very good. All right. Without funding, public school system wouldn't function, wouldn't be able to exist. So you give money here. What does the school system do for? I know this is more towards factories and industry, but this could be like business as well. What's the relationship? What do schools provide for here, Ms. Doris?
Workers.
Yes, educated workers, right? Educated workers. If you go back in time, a couple hundred years, you go back to these more agrarian type of societies, what happened to the educational system? Did they really have a need for an educational system? No, they didn't, right? Because you didn't need an educated worker. But now we do, okay? So what does business and factory and industry, what do they do for defense, for the military? What do they provide for them? Yeah, equipment, technology in the world that we live today, right? All that goes from here to here. And what does the defense do for government? The defense nation protects them that way. Okay, so they're all interrelated, just like our bodies with the particular organs that we have, like our heart, our mind, our nervous system, right? All of that works together, right, to create a functioning society. So in our bell work today, we had two types of functions. We had manifest, which is on the surface, purposeful, intended consequences. Then we had latent, the unintended consequences. We got a third one here to add. These are dysfunctions. Okay? Sometimes when you create a complex social system, you get a lot of good things out of it, right? So our lifestyle today is a lot easier than many years ago, right? It's a little bit cushy in comparison, right? We don't get the diseases as much. We don't, our life expectancy is much, much longer. And again, all that is reflective of how complex and how advanced our society is, okay? However, when you get that advanced, it's not all good things. Sometimes you produce dysfunctions. You're naturally going to do that, right? So as the comparison to the human body, when you work out, you create a healthier body. What happens sometimes? You sweat, right? And what I like to think about is you sweat. My wife says this. You stink, right? You smell. And so that would be a dysfunction associated with it. So using that metaphor analogy, we think about society as a whole, there's some dysfunctions there that happen with our society, our social structure that we've created, okay? So that would be like energy. We've created a lot of energy. We have a large population. We sustain a large population because we burn a lot of fossil fuels, right? And that creates pollution. So pollution would be one example of a dysfunction, okay? Another example would be crime, right? With a complex social system, you have different social classes, and that creates people that get motivated to get some certain types of things. Sometimes they're not provided the institutionalized means to have success, what is deemed as success in their social context, and so they become deviant to get those things, right? That breeds crime. Then you have illnesses, right? Sickness, disease. There's poverty in a capitalistic type of system that we have. Inevitably, there's going to be those that succeed, and there's going to be those that do not succeed. Okay, so those would all be dysfunctions associated with an advanced civilization. Okay, the fourth component, the fourth key, is power. The capacity of one social actor to get others to do its will. So you can see power exhibited in many different contexts. These are just two specific examples inside of like one's family. Parents exuding power over their children, and then in this particular case, the wife exuding power over the man, the husband. In this particular case, who makes all the financial decisions? Who gets to control the credit card? In that particular case, I like that idea. Personal situation there. So you can see power exhibited in both of these. So we'll look at the power in different contexts. One of the more common social experiments associated with power is called the Stanley Milgram experiment. You may write that down. Milgram, M-I-L-G-R-A-M, Milgram. And we'll look at how people in authoritative positions are able to exude their power over others around them and create some Some fairly significant influence there. Okay? The role of authority is huge. Sometimes we don't realize it. All right, the last one is culture. Culture is defined simply as a way of life, knowledge of how to act. This is where we acquire our social norms. And a lot of times, what I like to emphasize here with this last key is we don't realize, as we grow up in a particular culture, we, in a way, we become immune to noticing the influence of culture over our lives. And I think one reason why we become so unaware of its influence is because we're in it all the time. Right? Above Cal's head, there's a quote from Ralph Linton. It says, "The last thing a fish would ever notice would be water." Right? So another metaphor connection here. You know, a fish is always in the water, so they just don't notice it. We are in the American culture so much that we just don't notice, you know, all the social norms that we naturally acquire and its effect on our behavior. Sound good? So sometimes we have to really separate ourselves from it to get an understanding of how influential it really is. Sound good? Any questions about the 5 keys? No? Okay. Let's change modes a little bit and look at our Outliers text. So Outliers is one of my favorite books. Gladwell is one of my favorite authors. I think you'll really enjoy it as well. We've had some good experiences. Sociology students have good experiences in the past there as well. Before we read the introduction, I want to make a connection to one of your podcasts. Some of you guys listen to it. Who listened to the Retirement Kills one? Retirement Kills. Clayton did. Anybody else? Ms. Bowman did. Okay. I usually get a lot of students that choose that one. Why'd you choose that one, Clayton? It was the shortest one. If you go through them, and you quickly realize the others are 25 minutes, 35 minutes, something like that. And it is how long?
5 minutes.
It's 5 minutes long. So if you didn't know that, maybe next time you can choose that one if you're a little bit short on time. Okay. I thought about taking it out because of how much shorter it is than the others, but it's got some really good applications. So why does it say that retirement kills?
Because like as you continue, like if you retire early, after your retirement, you're not like doing as much, and like when you're working, your brain's tending to function more and like do certain things rather than when you're retired. It said that some people travel for like the first 3 years, and then you just tend to sit at home and watch TV.
Exactly. Okay. So I like that how you say that when you're at work, you're flexing your mental muscles, you're challenging yourself there. But one other component there that makes you flex your mental muscles at work is a lot of times when you go to work, are you there by yourself? You're not. All right. You are with other people, and there's a huge social component when it comes to going to work. And when you retire, you no longer go to work. You're not around as many people as you used to be. Consequently, you lose that social component, and then inevitably, your life expectancy is shortened up quite a bit. Okay, so this is really that idea that retirement kills is a correlation, not a causation. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So it doesn't really mean that it's going to kill you, right? It just means there's a very strong relationship between those two things. Okay, you can retire. And as long as you keep yourself in a social type of context, keep yourself involved in the community in which you live, you're going to have longevity, right? It's going to contribute to your longevity that way, okay? There you go. That's the social component that they need. You know, sometimes what we do is we talk about other things like exercise and eating right and those type of things. And those do contribute to longevity. But from my perspective, especially from the sociological perspective, the social component trumps those two variables of eating healthy and, what was the other one? Exercise, right? You gotta have the social component there. Yes.
Would putting like someone in a nursing home have the same effect?
You mean to increase their social component?
Because like
I think it depends upon what they do in the nursing home, right? So I know that there are some nursing home facilities where they do have different types of, events where they get everybody together and different types of tasks and stuff. That would be good to contribute to the long. There's other nursing homes where it's like you're a number and you get yourself a room and then you're by yourself, and that would definitely do the opposite. So it does depend upon the context there. Ms. Doris?
Also kind of depends on if you're sick or not.
It does, yeah. So, from the sociological perspective, it would be the social component, the social aspect kind of spurs you to get better faster, even when it comes to illnesses that way. Okay? All right, so that first introduction, the reason why we talk about that particular podcast is it's got a similar connection to this community called Rosetto. Rosetto or Rosetta? Is it Rosetto? Rosetto, okay? So keep that podcast in the back of your mind as you read the introduction. And then our task is not only to read the introduction, but also chapter 1, right? There will be a discussion post, or there is a discussion post. It's on the Google Classroom. That will be due next Tuesday. So you have plenty of time here, but due next Tuesday is when we're looking at when you need to have everything completed, okay? Any questions before I let you read? All right. You guys got some time to yourself here. So, was that? That's fine. Yeah. Make sure you've read the section. Have you seen the questions on the website? See this right down here? And then it's got chapters all broken down. There's that with the introduction. And there's 8 questions for you to consider. So if you know these, if you read through these questions, you're familiar with